In this video, I'm going to cover most of the keyboard commands fairly quickly just to give you an idea of where they're located in Macro Express. First, we need to start by making a new macro or editing a macro that we already have. I don't have any macros in this macro file, so I'm going to make a new one by right-clicking and left-clicking on New Macro. Next, it's going to ask me to choose a default activation. I'm going to choose No Activation and go to the scripting editor. Now, since we are talking about the keyboard, we need to go under the text commands category in the left task pane. Under here, we have quite a few different methods. The first one is date. Let's double click on this date to pull it up. When we're emulating the keyboard, this allows us to select a date to type in so that we don't have to change it every time it dynamically changes unless we set a date for a specific time. It also allows us to select a date format. From here I can just select a different method of displaying the date, and as you can see here, I'm just scrolling down, you can see all the different methods we have. Showing leading zero means that it will show these zeros or not display the zeros. Type out means that it will type the actual date out using the keyboard, not physically typing it, remember, but typing it into the computer, so it acts like we've typed it from the keyboard. The place in variable allows for us to place that current date in, say, %t1 or whichever variable name we give it. Just a quick overview of a variable if you didn't watch one of the earlier movies on variables. A variable stores information such as string, numerical, or decimal information. Next, we have our set date, which means that we can say how many days into the past and how many months into the past. So if today was March 4th and we wanted to type in 0 days and 2 months in the past, that would mean that the date would actually be January 4th that prints out because we set this 2 months into the past. If we set 2 months into the future, then it would mean that it would be June 4th. Anyway, let's go ahead and press OK, or you can press cancel. Our next option is the date time. First, we have our format drop-down, and we can select different types of displaying the date, either hours, minute, second, AM, PM, or month, day, year. So depending on what you want to display, whether it's the date or the time, you would select this certain format. Then we have the same options before. We can place this in a variable, T1 up. So rather than typing it out on the screen, it just stores that information into a variable for our later use. Type out allows us to type it out to the monitor or output the date or time to the computer. Next, we have use current date and time or specify date and time to print out. Adjust the current date and time by so many days in the past or future, so many months in the past or future, hours or minutes. Or we can prompt the user, which allows us to prompt the user for a date or a time or halt if the user cancels the macro from running. Let's go ahead and press cancel here and go to our next option. Encrypted text is similar to a text type, however you don't have as many options, and encrypted text hides the text when we type it in. So you have no idea what I typed in until it displays in like a dialog output box or multiple choice, anywhere that we redeclare that variable to display out on the screen. What I mean by that is if we click place in a variable and we say store in T1 and click OK, as you might recall, the %T1 was already used in our first one, date, save your year, month, day. The encrypted text also uses the variable T1. So which one's going to get precedence? Well, both of them will actually get precedence, but the date save is going to be overwritten by the bottom encrypted text because it comes after and it's later in the macro file. Now, just to tell you beforehand, my encrypted text says, hello, I am here. But now we need to figure out a way to output this to the screen. Well, there's quite a few different ways to do this. We could simply use a text type and type in %T1 after we have it open, say, Notepad, because if you can recall, if we use a text type and it's just in Windows, it's going to type that out as you would be typing that just in regular Windows. So if I minimize here and I just type in hello, how are you, you'll notice that nothing happens because there's nothing to output that text to. But if I open Notepad and I typed in hello, how are you, you'll notice that now we can see it in that Notepad file. And the reason why I tell you this is whenever you use a text type, you need to make sure that Macro Express knows which program to put that text type into. You need to tell it to open Notepad, and you need to tell it to activate Notepad so that it knows what it's going to do with that text. So now let's go ahead and close this Notepad out and open back Macro Express. So back to our problem. We need to find or figure out the easiest way to display this text. Well, I like to use the dialogues and the text box display because it simply will display that variable or whatever we type into just in a text box. You don't have to tell it to open Notepad and to activate the window. It just types it in. So let's go ahead and use the text box display, and under our box content we're going to type in %T1% and press OK. If we press play now, you'll notice that my output shows what my encrypted text is. I'm going to go ahead and press OK to this, and it will end my macro. Back to our examples, let's go back down the commands list to text. Our next option is text box close and text box display. These commands are the exact same as the dialog text box close and text box display. Let's go back under text again. Okay, our next choice is text type, which we have already covered in the last video. Next option is time. The nice thing about Macro Express is many of the commands are the same with slight differences. For example, time and date. They are pretty much the exact same, but one shows the time and one shows the date, or one exports the time to a variable and one exports the date to a variable. The difference between selecting a time format and the date time option is selecting a time format allows you more choices. For example, you can select the hour, minute, or you can display the time without AM or PM. Any option that you might want to have is pretty much listed here as far as time formats are concerned. The rest of the options show leading zeros, type out, place in variable, set time for hours or minutes into the past or future are pretty much the same as the date choices. And I already spoke about those in the date, so I'm not going to review them again. Let's go ahead and press OK for this, and our next option is wait for text. One convenient thing about Macro Express is it does combine quite a few of the similar commands together. As you notice, all these commands start with wait for. In this video, we're just going to talk about the wait for text and wait for key press. First off, the wait for text means that the macro, before continuing to run, is going to wait for whatever text we type in here. So if we typed in hello and pressed OK and pressed play, you'll notice that my text box just displayed. If I press OK, my macro keeps running because it hasn't seen the word hello displayed yet. So if I go into Notepad and I type in hello, you'll now notice that my macro ended. And it also jumped to the end if you noticed in the background of the scripting editor. Okay, let's go ahead and go back into my macro script and open the wait for text command again. The other options for this is making the word or the phrase case sensitive. This means that it's going to look for this phrase versus this phrase. The wait indefinitely means that the macro will keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting forever until it sees the word hello typed into the computer. A wait for a maximum of, say, 5 minutes and 30 seconds is going to wait 5 minutes 30 seconds before aborting the macro because it hasn't seen that text being displayed yet. Our next option is wait for text to play back. The reason why you might have this is if you were doing a text type and you had it typing out a phrase, you'd want to wait or have the macro wait until all that text has been typed out before continuing on with the macro script. Well, this will help get that accomplished. The final option, which I'm not going to go into detail, is key press. This allows you to specify a key, wait indefinitely or wait for a maximum of so much time before continuing. So the user has to type in enter, which I currently have in my key to wait for, before the macro will continue. Let's go ahead and press OK. The last option, wait text playback, we already discussed in the wait for text options. This concludes the training video for other text commands.